Hi. So in this video, wanting to just touch in on folding from the hips. So this is probably, or what I think is a really great practice to be aware of on the daily. I think we're all pretty familiar with that, like, oh, if you're bending down, bend from your knees and lift from your legs and keeping the low back out of it. And how can we protect the low back when we're bending and folding? So always definitely a great few things to keep in mind when you're outside gardening, hopefully, and things like that. But also just as we start moving into our sun salutations, there's quite a lot of forward folding, which is such a great movement, but just being aware. So I just wanted to offer this practice, just a quick little, it's going to be review for a lot of you, just these few things that I'm going to go through right now, but just really keeping in mind folding from the hips versus folding sort of from the low back area. Two very different purposes, depending on what you're doing. So just wanting to, what I'm kind of intending for these short little videos is really just that you spend a few moments every day, just throughout your day, just kind of recognizing this, or even just when you first wake up in the morning. This is usually something that I like to do when I first wake up in the morning too. So it would just be something simple. So I'll just stand back here so you can see me. Of just this ability, so we think about folding like we have the structure and the bones of our legs, then we have the pelvis, and then we have the upper body and the spine, which are actually three totally separate things. So if we see folding from, like if we're hinging to fold forward, truly we want that to come right from the front of the hips. So if you fold here, you can see that my back is nice and long. So there would be like this even line if we were to put a broomstick or a stick on the tailbone, between the shoulder blades and the back of the head. So I'm folding from my hips here versus this folding from the low back and kind of rounding, which both of them requires the weight of the head and the shoulders to go forward. Okay, so just taking a few moments in your day to just allow yourself to actually hinge right from your hips. I find it helpful to put my hands on my thighs, push them back. This is also really great to do against a wall. So as you can see here, if I had a wall behind me, which we can even kind of imagine this window line is like a wall. If you have your heels just a couple inches from the wall and folding forward, so you're going to get the tension in the back of the legs, but this sense almost like you could lift your sit bones and your tailbone to the sky. So if we come into this position here, it always, is probably going to start to activate the core as well, which is a lot of work. We can have a little hyper bend in the knees. You can have the legs straight, whatever feels best for you. Maybe even a little bit of playing around with pressing down through the heels and just kind of this sense of blossoming in the back. So the sit bones and the tailbones lifting to the sky. So just taking a moment and just feeling that. So just like folding forward. Just be mindful that you're not reaching with the chin. You can still maintain that length in the back of the neck. So again, just this sense that we could place something on the tailbone, the shoulder blades, space between the shoulder blades and the back of the head. So just this nice folding forward, coming up. And you'll start to feel perhaps a little more opening in the back of the legs, even just after a few moments of doing that. So as you come to fold here, so hinge at the hips, take a moment. Imagine you can lift your sit bones and your tailbone up towards the sky. There's length to the spine, to the crown of the head. The chin's tucked, it's not reaching forward. And then take a moment and just root down through the feet. Stay in the four corners. Notice where the weight is. Is it in your toes or is it in your heels? Maybe you do a little bit of rocking back and forth. And you're releasing some of the grip in the toes and just let them be light there. Just feeling that length. And we can imagine here that we've opened the blinds to some windows all the way up the backs of the legs. Everything's opening and creating some space in the hips. And then as you press down through the feet, you come up and everything closes in the back chain here. Okay. Next we can look at rounding forward. Okay. So we can start to tuck the chin and just allow ourselves to round all the way down through the spine. As soon as you start to feel that in your low back, bend your knees and come down. Just allow yourself to come into a forward fold, which can feel really nice and just kind of floppy and loose and relaxed here. And then press down into your feet as you roll yourself back up. You'll feel your belly activating there and coming up. Coming up tall. Just allow yourself to roll. And come back up. Do that a few times. Notice where you feel that. The core and the belly activating. Is it causing any tension or pain in your low back? Bend the knees. Does that take any of that away or relieve things? Let your head relax and you're coming up. So two very different type of actions can serve same purposes of just having an inversion here of the head below the heart, kind of a lengthening to the back chain of the body, stretch to the low back and the spine. So here I'm still have that same type of fold from my hips. I just entered into it from a different place. Maybe I have my knees bent here. Okay, so come down into a forward fold if you're not there already. Bend your knees just a little bit. Really find the positioning of your feet and the space between your feet that feels most sturdy for you. And just relax here. Because we'll also talk about two different ways to come up. So just to kind of play with this, we can bend the knees a lot. Put the elbows on the thighs for a moment, lift the chest. So as you can see here, I have a nice long spine. So you could almost, again, put a stick from my tailbone to the space between my shoulder blades to the back of my head. And then I'm just pressing down through the floor and coming up with a nice tall spine. This is if like you were kind of compressing or folding me down. Okay, take your time, come into a forward fold again, however that's going to look for you. Come back down, just let that relax. And then we can also rise up towards the sky with this kind of different approach or a rounding to the spine. Bending the knees. And just allow yourself to roll all the way up just like we were doing a minute ago. You can bring your arms up overhead if you wish. And let your hands come down. Come back to a forward fold, however you do that. Press into the feet. Roll yourself up. Arms to the sky. Exhale, hands come down. All right, so taking your time to play around with how does this feel in your body? So moving into something like this, where we inhale and rise the palms up over the head. Exhale, folding over hips, long spine, hinging from hips, and then coming to round into the spine. Bending my knees, inhale, rise all the way up, nice, tall, long spine. Exhale, coming down. Inhale, rising, palms. Exhale, moving into your forward fold. Rounding through, and then rolling yourself up to standing. Into inhale. So take your time, just play around. If you have any questions about that, send them along to me. Hopefully I was sort of able to articulate that clearly of just what the difference is and why we would maybe do one of those. I would suggest that as we get moving into forward fold, so depending on the tension in the backs of the legs, if there's anything going on in the low back, which again, we're gonna get into, because this also could have to do with a little bit of tension in the core. So take your time and kind of move through those a little bit and see, because if you do have some fairly chronic low back pain, I would probably suggest that you do more of the long spine, so the hinging from the hips, which I think a lot of us just need more practice in doing, is lengthening the spine, keeping the long spine folding forward, and when you come up, almost like you're coming into that spring and hinging up with the spine long versus just letting yourself round up. So play around with those, and yeah, just maybe throughout your day, just kind of like nice inhale rising up and coming forward, and just noticing the difference. Are you taking this constantly into your low back, or are you hinging from your hips to come into that forward fold? How can you root down to bring yourself up where you support your back in the strength of your low back, and take that a little bit more into your legs? So looking forward to hearing from you. Would love to hear yeah, just any observations that you have from these two practices. We'll talk soon.